Good morning, everyone. Morning, afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. If you want to say hello in the chat, that would be so nice. Just introduce yourself. And we're going to get started in just a minute. Let me know that you can see and hear me as well. Good morning, David. If you're responding, that's a good sign that you can already hear me. Great. Okay, welcome to this Lotus Pose workshop. I'm really happy to have you guys here. I'm going to give you a little overview of what we're going to do, how the workshop is going to run. But first, just to say, this is a donation-based workshop. So if you have the means to donate, then I've left a link beneath the video to my PayPal account, so you can just donate as much as you can afford. If not, don't worry, please just join in anyway, okay? Good morning, everyone. Hi. Okay, so yes, this is I'm really excited to share this workshop with you. It's probably one of the most commonly requested topics and the most commonly asked questions that I get from students and from people online on YouTube. So I hope that I can shed a bit of light on all of the things that I know about this pose and how to work safely and intelligently into Padmasana. Let me just tell you a few things that you might need as we go through this workshop. They don't have to be yoga props, but some sort of props that you can use to prop up your hips. So I have yoga blocks, but if you have cushions from your couch, if you have bolsters, or even just rolled up blankets, cushions, anything like that works really well. We will need something to prop up the hips probably at some point throughout the workshop. So if you just want to grab something now, that would be great. What else do I have? I'm going to show you some modifications for Lotus Pose towards the end of the workshop. So for that, you might need a strap or a belt or a dressing gown cord, works really well. And then also I'll show you a modification with, I'm going to use my eye pillow, but if you have a small towel or even just a hand towel works fine for this. But these are not necessarily just additional things. And then at the end, I'm also going to show you some self-massage techniques. So if you do have them available, then great. But if not, don't worry. This is just kind of an extra towards the end. So main thing is something to prop up your hips, whether that's blankets, cushions, or blocks. Okay, so I'll tell you the plan for the workshop. We're going to split it into roughly three sections. The first section, I'm going to talk you through my safest technique to come in and out of Lotus Pose. And the reason we're starting with that is because I want you to be able to see where we're aiming and which different parts of the body need to open up and stretch efficiently in order for us to do the full posture comfortably. So we'll start with a little discussion on the technique, but I don't want you to join in at that point just because we're not warm yet. And then the bulk of the workshop is going to be us talking through three main exercises, stretches / exercises that I think are the most efficient at preparing the body for Padmasana. So that's where we'll spend most of our time. And then at the end, we'll revisit the technique. I'll invite you to try the technique of coming in and out of Lotus Pose with me. And then we'll also talk about we'll troubleshoot our Lotus Pose. So that means we'll have a look at where you might be feeling the discomfort or pain in the pose and what that might be telling you about what you could be doing wrong or where you could improve your technique. And then I'll also show you a few modifications that might give you a little bit of relief, and also they'll give you an indication of what you need to work on. So that's roughly the plan for the day. If you have questions as we go through, then please just put them in the chat. I will do a little Q&A at the end. So we'll build up the questions as we go through. I might have a look as we're going through the workshop, but it's going to be quite intense in terms of we'll be on the mat doing things. So I might not get a chance to do questions until the end. So please feel free to add them though. And just so you know, this workshop is going to be recorded, so you can come back to it and revisit it after we've done the live session. Okay, I think that's everything. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I am especially passionate, I guess, about this pose and this technique. And the reason is because a few years ago I was suffering quite badly with some hip pain. It came out of nowhere. I'd been practicing Ashtanga yoga for quite a few years, and then all of a sudden I started to get this really sharp pinching pain in my hips, and I couldn't do postures like Padmasana. There was just no chance. I couldn't even sit cross-legged because it just felt like something in my hip joint was like grinding or crunching, and so I really had to dial back my practice. I was actually diagnosed with a structural thing in the hips that's called FAI, or femoral acetabular impingement, which is basically just saying that your bone shape is such that in certain positions you get bone on bone compression in the joint, which made sense in terms of what I was feeling, but it didn't make sense in terms of the fact that I'd been doing the poses for so long, and then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. And in my road to recovery, I did an awful lot of research, anatomy trainings, self-experimentation, took loads of courses, and I believe that what I learned from all of that is really, really helpful for people who are trying to come into Lotus. So what I learned in terms of how to stretch efficiently, how to actually stretch, that I don't think yoga really teaches us, as well as what's probably more important is also strengthening the muscles that you're trying to stretch as well. So I hope that that's going to help you in your practice if I can share all of that knowledge with you. So maybe having a pen and paper would also be useful, because I think some of those things you might want to remember, but as I said, it's going to be here forever, the workshop. So yes, so that's my journey, and now I can sit in Lotus pose quite comfortably since creating like a self rehab program, if you like, and doing a lot of self body massage and strengthening techniques. So I can sit in Lotus pose comfortably. I don't have the pinching in my hips anymore. So it tells you a lot about what was going on, and I think it will become clearer as we go through. I'll kind of talk you through what I realized as I was going through that journey. So let's get started with talking about the technique for coming in and out of Lotus. So for now, I just want you to sit in any comfortable seated position. You might be on your yoga mat. You don't really need to be on your yoga mat yet, just as long as you can see me. And don't feel like you have to join in this part of the workshop. I just want to share with you my step-by-step technique for coming into the pose. We're just going to look at one side to begin with, because I think that holds the key and the secrets to the whole posture really, and towards the end we'll actually look at both sides. So when I'm coming into Lotus pose, okay, there are three main stages to this posture, and the first is, we always start with the right side, is bringing the heel up towards the sit bones, and that basically means fully closing the knee joint. So you see I go from extended knee to flex knee, closing the knee joint. So you could think of it as either bringing your heel to your sit bones, to the space at the back of your thigh, or you can think of it as pressing your thigh and your calf muscles together, so the back of the thigh touches the calf. And the reason that this stage one is so important is because, especially when you're first starting to learn the posture, if you're a beginner, or even if you're experiencing pain and you're a more intermediate practitioner, closing the knee joint and then keeping this closed as you move in and out of the posture is going to prevent this joint from twisting. So you probably already know that the knee is actually a hinge joint. It does have some rotation, but for the purposes of keeping the knee as safe as you possibly can, I would just forget about the knee joint rotating. Just treat it as a hinge joint, and treat this calf and thigh now as one unit for the rest of the posture. So that means don't think that these can come apart and move independently of one another. Press them together and then just consider this to be one limb. It doesn't move separately, okay? So really important is to be able to bring that calf and the thigh together. And we'll talk about, if you can't do that, how you would go about getting to that stage, okay? The second stage is then, once you've got that pressure between the calf and the thigh, or the heel and the back of the hips, you let the knee fall out to the side. And notice, I didn't let the knee joint open, it stayed closed. I just let the knee fall out to the side. And this is coming into Janu Shirshasana A position. If you practice Ashtanga, you'll know this one, folding forwards. And here you see that my knee pretty much falls all the way down to the floor. That's because these muscles on the inside of the leg are quite flexible. They're quite stretched. If they were tighter, my knee would be somewhere up here. And that's something that you see quite commonly in people who first start practicing Lotus Pose, is they can't quite get the knee all the way to the floor, there or thereabouts. So having lengthened the inside of the thighs is a really key part to getting into this posture comfortably. And then the third stage of coming into the Lotus is to draw the heel up and over. So it's basically lifting this unit up off the floor without letting this knee joint open. Okay, so out to the side, scooping the heel up. So this thigh and shin unit lift up, and then they come in. And then you're in the half Lotus Pose. And for now, that's where we're going to go up to, because I think this shows you the key 3 areas that you need to work on in order to come into the posture. So all of those 3 areas, we have the heel coming into the thigh, and that's basically a function of the front of the leg, how stretched and how long these muscles at the front of the hip are. We have the opening out to the side. That's a function of how tight the inner thigh muscles are. And then we have the drawing up and across, which is a function of how tight the outer part of your hip muscles are. So you have these 3 areas to work on, and really they all have to be working harmoniously. They all have to be lengthened and supple enough for this posture to be comfortable. So you might see some people who can get the knee to the floor in this position, but when it comes to Lotus, they have really sharp pain on the ankle or pain in the knee. And that's probably because they have some tightness on the outside of the hip, and that part of the movement is not happening yet. Simultaneously, you might find some people that can do this really easily, but then they try to let the knee fall out, and this muscle is so tight that it's not allowing that opening to happen. So all 3 parts need to be working together for this posture to feel comfortable. And I'm going to show you right now how we're going to work on those 3 different areas. Okay, so this is the bulk of what we're going to learn today. And these are the stretches or the exercises that I think are the most efficient for you to learn and comfortably sit in Lotus Pose or work up to Lotus Pose. And the first most important principle that I want you to take away from this workshop is that when you are stretching your muscles, when you're lengthening your muscles, you actually also want to be strengthening them as well. So your body doesn't really like to have long, weak muscles, because when you've got long and weak muscles around a joint, that joint is not supported. Okay, so it means that the joint becomes unstable and the body responds often with pain. So let's think about it in terms of Lotus Pose. You might have really flexible inner thigh muscles, really flexible hip flexor muscles on the fronts of the legs, and super flexible glutes. They might all be really long and really floppy. But if you don't have the strength in those muscles to fire up in their lengthened position, then your body could respond with pain. That's basically what happened with me. So you might go for your whole life being really flexible, really floppy, and you'll never have a problem. But if you're like me, your body might not like having really long and weak muscles. It might want you to strengthen the muscles as you're lengthening them. So key takeaway here, and you'll feel it in your body how different it is when you strengthen and lengthen. The key takeaway is we want to strengthen the muscles in their lengthened positions. So not only is this going to help you to avoid pain and injury, it's also a much more efficient way to stretch. The body responds much better when you are actively stretching than when you're just passively stretching. You can do both, but I would argue that the one thing you can't do without is active stretches. So much safer for your body, much more stable and supportive for the joints, much more efficient as well. And there was one more, I've forgotten, that will do. So safer and more efficient. So the 3 poses that we're going to focus on are corresponding to those 3 areas of the hips. And you'll notice that we're working on all 3 sides. It's kind of coming at the hip joint from 3 different angles. The first is stretching the front of the thigh and the front of the hip flexors. The second is the inside of the hip, the inside of the thighs, so the muscles here. And then the third, we're going to target the outside of the hip. So we're coming at it from all different angles. So we have these strong and long muscles that are able to safely come into this posture without pain and without weakening the stability of the joints. Okay, so for the first posture, we're working on the hip flexors, and we're going to come into a pose called Virasana, which is also known as hero pose. And for this one, I would like you to take a prop. We're going to kneel up come up onto our shins and kneel. I'm going to take a block under both hips, and I want you to find a position for the hips where you feel a mild to moderate stretch in the fronts of the hips, okay? So it doesn't need to be really intense because we're going to stay here for a good few minutes. So for you, that might mean that you need 2 blocks. So what I find is when I have people come to my classes who've done other activities, especially things like running and athletic kind of activities, they will have much bulkier and stronger thighs and hip flexors. So they need to begin with their hips much higher. So if you need, that might mean coming up as high as this. Don't be shy, just take whichever option you can feel a mild to moderate stretch in the fronts of the hips. If you're more flexible already in those areas, you might not even find a stretch here. So you might not have any props, and you might sit your hips down between your heels and you're still not feeling anything. I want you to stay upright for now, but on our second round of repeating these postures, I'll give you an option for how you can progress in Virasana. So you're in your Virasana. You can have your heels in, so you're almost sitting on your heels, but then gradually you would take them wider to progress in the pose. So the heels would come outside of the hips. And so you're probably feeling something along the front of the thighs, maybe some mild discomfort at the very bottom of the thighs. As long as there's no sharp pinching pain, then you're good to stay there for a couple of minutes. Okay, so right now we're doing a passive stretch. We're not activating the muscles as we're trying to stretch them. I actually find in Virasana it's okay, because in yoga we do tend to do a lot of strengthening work on the hip flexors and the thighs. So for example, if you practice Ashtanga, you practice Uttita Hasta Padmasana, where you catch the big toe and then you hover the leg in the air. This is working really strongly into those muscles, so I don't worry so much about strengthening this part of my body. But just so that you know, if you did want to progress and increase the strength and the length, you could do a Nordic curl, which is where you are leaning backwards, keeping the pelvis slightly drawn under, belly nice and strong, and then you just lean backwards so that you're using the strength in the fronts of the hips and the thighs, the quads, as you lengthen the muscles. So as you lean back, it's really hard and builds a ton of strength in the front of the hips. So just in case you did want to strengthen those muscles. Okay, so Virasana is for that first stage of Padmasana, where you need to bring the heel into the hips. I would advise you to make this part of your daily routine. So it's such a simple pose. You don't need to set your yoga mat up and have all your props around you. You could do this whilst you're watching TV for 10 minutes, and I often do this. Or I will sit and work at my laptop for 10 minutes in this pose. And just adding those little minutes of Virasana into your daily routine or weekly routine can really build up and help to maintain the healthy length in these muscles. So I think we've probably been in here for about 2 minutes now. As I said, we're going to repeat this sequence. So on the second time, I'm going to show you a progression if you don't feel anything. You could stay in this pose for 10 minutes, no problem. You might need to prop your hips up a little bit higher so that it doesn't become too intense. But 10 minutes a day would be great for your the health of or the length in these muscles at the front of the hips. Let's move on and work on stage 2 of the Lotus, which is Padmasana. So we're working on the adductors, the insides of the hips. So for this one, I'd like you to, even if you already know Padmasana and you know that you can sit comfortably on the floor, I'd actually like you to sit on a prop, because this is actually can be a more challenging option to sit on a prop. So it could be a block, it could be a cushion, whatever you have lying around, just so that your hips are off the ground. And let's have a talk about Padmasana. So for you, depending on the flexibility of your adductors, these muscles here, you might need to take the feet a bit further away. The closer you have them towards your hips, the more intense it's going to be. So just work with wherever you are now. And so regular Padmasana in the Ashtanga practice anyway, we just kind of push the knees down to the floor and then fold forwards. So that's great in terms of flexibility for these muscles, but could these muscles then fire up? Could they be of any use to you in that wide position? Probably not, because they're not used to being actually used in that position. They're not used to being active in their lengthened position. They're just used to being passive. So what we want to try and do here is build up the ability of these muscles to fire up, to activate, even when they're in a lengthened position. And as I mentioned, this is not only just for stability and safety and comfort in the pose, it's much more efficient for your stretching. So what we're going to do, think about how we're lengthening these muscles by pressing the knees down to the floor. We're actually going to contract those muscles by squeezing the knees up against the elbows. Okay, we're going to hold that for 5 seconds and then we're going to release. So try that with me. I want you to feel these muscles firing up. So let's press the elbows down against the knees and then squeeze the knees for 1, squeeze the knees up, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then release and just relax. And we're going to do it again. So press the elbows down, squeeze the knees up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. And what you might notice is each time you relax, your muscles, your knees drop out to the side. Just a little bit more. Let's do that again. So pressing down and squeezing up. 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. I can definitely feel my knees dropping down each time I let go of the contraction. So one more time. 1, squeeze the knees up. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Good. And then come back up. So here we were working the contraction on the inside of the thighs. But I want you to think also about when you're not trying to use a force to come into this pose, which muscles would it be that would get you into Padmasana position? It's actually the contraction in the glutes, in the outsides of the hips. So what the glutes do is they rotate the thighs outwards. So they pull the knees out to the sides, which is exactly what we're doing in Padmasana, right? We're sending the knees down. Usually we just use our hands to force ourselves down. But now I'm going to invite you to try and use the activation of your glutes to bring you deeper into the pose. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. This time you place your hands under your knees. So you have them to press your knees against. You're going to press your knees against your hands by squeezing the glutes. Let's do that for 5. 1, squeeze the glutes. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and release. Take a breather. Think about rotating the thighs out to the side by squeezing. Let's go again. Press down with the knees, pull up with the hands. 3, 4, 5, and relax. Hopefully you can feel the activation in the outside of the hips, the glute max, glute medius. Let's do it again. 1, 2, pull down hard with the knees, squeeze the glutes, and 5, and relax. One more time. Press down, squeeze the glutes. 2, 3, 4, and 5, and relax. Good. Okay, we're going to combine those two techniques to work the hips on both sides of the joint. So for stage 1, we press down with the hands or with the elbows, whichever you prefer, and squeeze up with the knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and switch. Press down with the knees. Squeeze the glutes. 3, 4, 5. Press up. 1, 2. You should be really strongly pressing up. 4 and 5, and then back down. 1. Shaking is good. 2. Even breaking a sweat in this posture. 4 and 5. One more time. Press up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then press down. Squeeze the glutes. 2, press the knees into the hands. 4 and 5, and relax. So you can tell I'm a little bit out of breath. That's because I'm strongly contracting the muscles. So it's not just a gentle pressing down, we're actually strengthening the muscles by resisting the movement. So after you've done the contractions, then you can sink down a little bit more passively into the pose. See if you have a bit more range of motion. Don't worry if you don't. Just stay at a position where you feel a stretch on the inside of the legs, but it's not pinching, it's not sharp, it's not too intense that you can't breathe. Good, and then bring your hands under your knees and we'll slowly bring them back together. It might feel a bit tender. Okay, good job. So the last exercise is for that third stage of Lotus pose, which is bringing the heel up and over into the groin, and that's targeting the outside of the hip. So for this one, we're actually going to use a version of Pigeon Pose, but probably not as you know it from yoga. It's more of a therapeutic or functional pigeon. So, and for this, again, you might need to prop yourself up. So option to take as many props as you need. We're going to start on the right leg. So that means bringing the right knee out in front of you, and the shin parallel to the front of the mat is like almost the full version, I guess. Or if it's too much when you bring it parallel with the foot flexed, just bring the shin a bit closer in. So you can play around with the angle. You can go from here to here. Try and find a comfortable position for the knee, for the shin. Your back foot, I don't care what you do with it. So if it's comfortable to take it back, take it back. If you prefer, just have it here. We're not going to be focusing on the back leg. We're just focusing on the front leg. Okay, so think about which muscles we're targeting here. We're trying to work on stretching the tissues here on the outside of the hips. So a classic pigeon stretch would work to lengthen those muscles. So we'd probably just flop down like this and stay here for 1,000 minutes. What we're going to do instead is much more efficient, much more targeted and safer, which is to activate the muscle whilst we are stretching it. So we're learning to fire up the muscle at the entire range of motion. And the way we're going to do that is press the knee and the ankle down into the floor. So just try that a few times. Press down through those 2 points. Imagine even the whole shin pressing down into the mat. And what you should feel is some activation on the outside of the hip. So pressing down against the mat. And if this is enough for you, you're going to stay here and work with the contractions again. So I'll do some counting in a moment. If you'd like a bit more, you can start to lean forwards. So you can have your fingers on the mat, You can have your hands on your foot and your knee for support. Try not to put too much weight in them. Try to use the strength of the thigh and the leg to keep yourself up. We're going to start to lean forwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then push back up with the leg. So you're pressing down through these 2 points as you lower down, and you keep pushing against the floor for 1, keep pushing down, 2, feel the outside of the hip, 3, 4, 5, and then push through the leg to come back up. You should really feel a strong activation. Let's go again, leaning forwards. 1, if it's too much when you lean forwards, you're just going to stay up here and you're going to press down. 3, 4, 5, and then push through those 2 points to come back up. One more time, pushing down, even though you're coming forwards, you're resisting the stretch. 1, press the knee and the ankle down. 3, 4, and 5, and then push to come back up. Good. Slowly, you can rotate to the other side. So we're going to switch on to the left leg. And you should really feel, it's almost like you've been doing some sort of weights exercise in the front hip that you've just been working. It should feel really activated. So we do exactly the same on this leg. So I'm pressing down through the knee and the ankle, and I'm finding the activation on the outside of the back of the front hip in the glutes. So we exhale, lower down, but I'm pushing away, pushing away, pushing away. And then 1, 2, push the floor away. 3, 4, 5, and then push to come back up. And again, we lower down and then push through the floor. If you want more, extend your arms. 3, push the floor away. 4, 5, and then come back up. 2 more, lower down, push through those 2 points. 2, 3, feel the outside of the hip. 4, 5, and then push back up. And one more time, pushing down through these 2 points. Feel the strength and the firing up of the outside of your hip. 4 and 5, come back up. And then very gently come out of the pose. Ooh, so those muscles on the outside of the hips might not be used to being worked so much, but we're going to do it all over again. So let's come back into Virasana. So we're coming back to work on stage 1 of the Lotus here. Remember, you can prop yourself up as high as you need to find the stretch in the front of your hips. We're going to stay here for a couple of minutes. And I'm going to show you a progression as well, but just in case you wanted to share a really lovely practice with you that is very soothing for those of you who do experience pain in these poses. And when you're in Virasana, what you can do is you can place your hands on your knees and you can just become a little bit more aware of the breath. You can even close your eyes if you like. And as you exhale, just imagine sending the prana from the breath down into the knees. You can visualize, if you like, a glowing light, a warm light surrounding the knees. And it's almost just like you're sending affection, care, and love to the joints as you breathe deeply. So if you're staying upright, this is a really beautiful practice to do whilst you're in Virasana. If you just want to watch Netflix in Virasana, that's fine too. If you would like something a bit deeper and you're not finding a stretch here anymore, then you can start to lean backwards into Supta Virasana, which is reclining hero pose. So what we would do here is we're trying to keep the lower belly drawn in and avoid arching the lower back, because once you arch the lower back, you basically lose the stretch in the hip flexors. Okay, so it's a compensation if you're arching the lower back. So what you would do is you would come back onto your hands And then as you're extending, you're opening this angle, you're going from here to here. So you're extending the hip flexors, and then you can lift the hips. And then tucking the tailbone as much as you can. So not arching the back, we're tucking the tailbone, drawing in the lower belly. And then as you warm up, or as you progress through the pose, you can start to come down onto the elbows, lowering down eventually all the way to the floor. This might take many months of practice. And you can see here, my back is arching, so I'm clearly compensating here for tightness. But if you can keep the lower back drawn in, the lower ribs down in this pose, then you could stay here and you can even extend the arms. So that would be the progression once you're really not feeling anything in Virasana anymore. Okay, let's move on again to stage 2, which was our Baddha Konasana, or butterfly pose, if you like. So this time I want you to increase the intensity of your stretches and your strengthening. So the feet come together, the knees out to the side. And let's start again with pressing down with the hands or the elbows, and then squeezing the knees back up. Okay. So here again, because we're warming up now, you might have more range of motion. So you could take your knees a little bit wider and work on the contractions from there. If you're taking your knees wider and you're feeling any pinching, then you just want to forget about stretching, forget about taking the knees down, and just work the contractions, okay? So let's press down with the hands, squeeze up with the knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, and contract. 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's take it up with the intensity. So squeezing as if you're really trying to push your hands up away from the floor. And relax. 2, a little bit of shaking could be normal. 4, 5, and last one. 1, squeeze the knees up. 3, 4, 5, and relax. Good. Let's take it the other way. So this time the hands are under the knees and we're pressing down by squeezing the glutes, okay? So pressing down, 1, 2, rotate the thighs out to the side, 4, 5, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, and press down with the knees by squeezing the glutes, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, and squeeze down. Should be shaking, should be sweating. 4, 5, and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, and squeeze. 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Okay, last round. This time we do both sides, switching between them, alternating. Pressing down and squeezing the knees up. 1, feel the insides of the thighs. 3, 4, 5, and press down. 2, 3, squeeze the glutes. 5, and then adductors, insides of the thighs, are firing up. 3, 4, 5, and then press down. Open the knees. 2, 3, 4, 5. Press up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and last one. Press down. 2, squeezing the glutes to rotate the thighs out to the sides, and relax. If you have the space and there's no pinching, there's no pain, you could then go down into a deeper passive stretch. If you're finding that it's painful, just forget about the stretch. Stay up where you're comfortable. And then gently bring the knees back together. It might feel a bit tender. You've worked the muscles hard. Good. Last exercise then is back to the pigeon. I don't know if I showed you actually I should have showed you with a prop. So if you need a prop here, many people do, take it under your front hip. So your front hip is propped up and the back foot is just left to its own devices, wherever is comfortable for you. This prop is a bit too high for me, so I'm just going to stay on the floor, but you could take a cushion, blanket, whatever works. And let's go back to those contractions on the front leg. So this time we're targeting the tissues on the outside of the hip. And we're going to press down through these 2 points, fire up the outside of the hip, and exhale down, pushing the floor away for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then push, come back up. And lowering down slowly with control by controlling with this foot and this knee. 1, you can put your hands here. 2, or you could release the hands and extend the arms. 4, 5, push back up. And let's go down slowly with control, push the floor away. 2, 3, you can go a bit lower each time if you have the space, but keep that activation, keep the contraction. Inhale back up and then back down. 1, feel the outside of the hip. 3, 4, 5, and then come back up. 1 last time, lower down with control. 1, 2, 3, push the floor away. 4 and 5, come back up. Well done. And let's switch to the left leg. Again, propping up as high as you need under the left hip. And this foot can be closer if it's too much with the shin parallel. And start to press down through the front shin, through the ankle and the knee, and lower down slowly with control. 1, push the floor away. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then push to come back up. So firing up the outside of the hip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then push, come back up. Keep pressing down, even though you're folding. Try to push the floor away and resist the stretch. 3, 4, 5, and come back up. 1 more time. 1, you can stretch your arms out if you want more. 3, or keep your fingers on the floor. 4 and 5. Inhale, push back to center and slowly come back to center. Okay, how was that for you guys? Hopefully you can feel the complete difference between Baddha Konasana when you're just pressing down and going forwards versus Baddha Konasana when you're resisting and firing up the muscles around the hip joint using those contractions. You can apply this technique to any posture that you do, but for Lotus Pose, these 3 different postures that we've just done, I find target all the right muscle groups really efficiently. So if you stay on top of your stretching, your active stretching, then you'll find that those areas all combine to create a much more comfortable Lotus Pose. The only other exercise that I would recommend is probably to do a little bit of self-massage. So the 2 best tools that I have are a foam roller, which you would use for the fronts of the thighs. I also use it for the insides of the thighs. And then a massage ball for the outside of the hip, the outer hip area. If you do have discomfort or pain in Lotus Pose, if you start rolling around on these 3 different areas that we've worked on, so fronts of the thighs and the hip flexors, insides of the thighs, the adductors, and outsides of the hips, the lateral rotators, the glutes and glute medius, you'll probably find some tense areas, some knots or areas of tension when you roll around and do some self-massage. So it's a really good way to complement your stretching and your strengthening. So for the outside of the hip, you would just kind of find the tender points, just where we've been stretching basically. Roll around, try and find anywhere that feels particularly tender. It should feel like it hurts so good. That's the kind of feeling you're looking for. And then you would just stay here and allow yourself to sink down into the massage ball. And that targets the muscles in a different way to stretching. It's a kind of different complementary technique. So it's not a substitute for stretching or strengthening, but it's complementary. So I do recommend combining those approaches. The other tool that I was showing you was this foam roller. So what you would do for the fronts of the thighs is just bend one knee and then get the foam roller on the thigh and try to roll up and down right up to the ends of the muscles. So not just the belly of the muscles, but right up to the top of the thighs and then right down almost close to the knee, but take the pressure off, lift the pressure off when you get to that bit because it's a little bit more tender. And then you can change the angle. So try to get at the muscles from all different angles, from the sides, and then if you were doing the insides, this is how I would use a foam roller. I would bend the knee that I'm working on and lean into the foam roller. So roll it out to the side and then back in. I find some really tender points right on the insides of the adductors here. You just can't get to that with stretching. So having some self-massage tools around, I'd say, is a really good step in your Lotus journey. Let me know if you want a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial on the self-massage techniques, but you can also just YouTube and Google those and you'll find probably that you get a lot of relief and a lot of progress once you add this into your stretching practice or your movement practice. Okay, so we've done a quick demo of the technique just to show you the different areas of the body that we needed to work on. I've shown you the 3 main stretches and strengthening techniques that I use. And then now I want to revisit the technique. So don't feel like you have to try Lotus pose here if you're still not ready for it. We still haven't done a full yoga practice, so I wouldn't be too worried about doing the pose right now. I just really want you to see and understand the technique in full so that you can then go away and apply the principles. So let's have a look. Then we're going to troubleshoot our Lotus pose and learn how to modify as well, all in the next 14 minutes. So let's have a look. Stage 1 of the technique is to close the knee joint. And remember, from this point on, we consider this to be one unit. The shin bone does not move relative to the thigh bone. Step 2, we open the hip. It's like the Baddha Konasana movement by dropping the knee out to the side. And then step 3, we gently pick the heel up. This stays closed. I haven't opened the joint. And we lift the thigh up and bring it over, the foot over into the groin. So it's like I think about my heel coming up to my navel and over into the groin, okay? And at this point, if your knee is quite high off the floor here, it's just usually a sign that there needs to be a bit more opening in the hip. So it's not a problem. It just means that I would be mindful about moving on to the next stage if your knee is really high. So if it's up here, don't try the full Lotus pose because it's just gonna put the force on it's gonna put the force of the pose into the knee because it's the most vulnerable bit that twists easily. So work on letting the thigh come down towards the floor. It doesn't need to be touching the floor, but towards the floor. At this point, if you're stuck here and you find that there's pain, you can try propping the knee up on something. Usually I just give the option to students to hold the knee because it's a little bit less faff than getting out a block. But if you wanted to, you could also support the knee, and then you could move into a pose like Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana. So you could work on the bind for this pose from this position. But since we're going into the full Lotus now, let's have a look at the next stage. So the first leg, straightforward, maybe not doable on day one, but you can see how it's going to work. The second leg is always the hardest, and this is the bit where people are most likely to get injured because you've got this handicap of having this leg in your way already. But I want you to try and repeat exactly the same thing that we just did on the right side on the left leg. Okay, so first step was to close the knee joint. So I brought my calf and my thigh muscles together. Second stage was to open the hip. So I let my knee fall out to the side. And again, if the knee is up here, I wouldn't go on to the next stage yet, just because it needs to open a bit more. These muscles need to lengthen more before you're going to be able to sit comfortably in this pose. Otherwise, it might be vulnerable to twisting. You could have a go, but if you start to feel pinching, just back off, okay? Work more on those 3 exercises that we just did. So the third stage is the tricky bit, is to bring this heel to the navel and into the groin without opening this knee joint. How do you do that? The way you do it is by swinging the knee and the shin, in fact, this whole thing, out to the side, lift up the heel, and then bring it back. So I'm going to take the whole thing out to the side, lift the heel, and then bring it back across, okay? It's really subtle, so I'm exaggerating here. You won't see that much movement, but that's the intention that I have in my mind when I'm doing the pose. So my right foot is comfortably in place. So I go from here, I take the knee out to the side, keep the knee joint closed, bring the heel up and over. Shall I do that again for you one more time? It's such a subtle movement, but just the intention is where you're going to find the secret, or the key, the missing ingredient. So it's out to the side, up and across. And then we're in lotus pose. Now, just as important is coming out of the pose, of course. So let's just reverse those stages to get back to our original position. So first we're going to gently lift the heel, just to give us some slack, but not wrenching the heel up. Lift the heel, take the knee wide, place the foot on the floor, and back to center. Okay, so we just reversed it. We went up like this and then back down. And the same on the right side. You can gently lift the heel, take the knee out to the side, and then back into a comfortable cross-legged position. So that is the step-by-step technique to coming in and out of lotus pose safely. Now let's think about troubleshooting our lotus pose. If you come into lotus pose and you're experiencing, or even half lotus pose, and you're experiencing ankle pain, this is kind of the easier one, I think. If you're experiencing ankle pain, it's usually just a sign that the hip muscles, especially the outer hip, are tight and they are pushing, or they're pulling your thigh and your shin down. So they're creating this downward force, and of course, because this thigh bone is in the way, your ankle is then getting squashed against the thigh, so it's going to pinch at the front of the ankle. So if that's you, if you're feeling the ankle pain in lotus pose, you need to work more on both Baddha Konasana, but if your Baddha Konasana is pretty good and you're feeling strong and long, strengthened and lengthened, then also work on Pigeon Pose more. So pressing down and leaning forwards to stretch the outside muscles of the hip. The other posture you could work on, if Pigeon Pose just doesn't work for you, I know some people find it really tender for the knees, or I've heard people say that they do get hip pinching. You could also try this version. It's essentially the same movement. So you bring your shin across into the same kind of pigeon position, and then you would bring the thigh and the chest closer and closer over time. And the way that you strengthen in that pose, because you don't just want to get floppy, you want to also strengthen these muscles to keep it stable, is you would press the shin that way. So even though you're trying to bring it into your chest, you would also resist it by pressing away from you. And you can do the contractions. You can press away for 5, bring it in for 5, press for 5, and then relax for 5. Same idea. So ankle pain, work more on the outer hips. If you have a knee pain, which is the big one really, pinching on the inside of the knee in lotus pose is usually a sign that the meniscus, which is like a little bit of cartilage inside the knee, is getting squished. So you don't want to push into that pain because it's a very sensitive area, and you don't want to get a meniscus tear because they really hurt and they take ages to heal. So pinching in the inside of the knee, back off first, so don't do it if there's pain there. And what it's usually a sign of is that the external rotation is not happening in the hip. So that's Baddha Konasana really, is that movement of the thigh bones rotating out to the sides is just not happening enough. So when you're coming into the pose, the thigh bone is not rolling that way. It's not rolling away from the knee, from the shin. It's rolling towards it. And so you get this pinching sensation in the cartilage. It can also be a sign that it's twisting, but the twisting is also happening because those tissues around the hip joint are not stretched enough. So if you do get pinching, back off from doing the full pose. You've got your whole life to get the Padmasana, and your whole life is plenty if you work very intelligently with those 3 stretches and exercises that I showed you, because they're much more efficient than just trying to do Lotus pose every day and it pinching the knees. It's much more efficient to do those exercises. The only other, okay, and let me show you some modifications you could do if you do find that pinching in your knee. But I give these with a pinch of salt, because if you're finding that it's pinching, I wouldn't be doing the pose. I would avoid the posture, and I would work on the other poses that I showed you instead. But this is a good test. So this is how you would know for sure that it's the external rotation that you need. If you place something like a towel or I'm just using an eye pillow, and in between your knee, and then you try to come into the pose. This is actually a bit thick. I need to thin it out a bit. So just something quite thin in between the knee, and you come into the pose. Is your pain relieved when you do that? Because if so, it's a sign that basically what you're doing with the towel is you're creating more space in the knee joint, and therefore it's basically doing the work of the external that the external rotation would do if it was happening properly. So this is not a substitute for doing the stretching. It's just for your understanding to see, if I create more space there, the pain goes away. So that would suggest that something is causing those 2 points to come together. Natalie told me it's because this action of pressing the thighs out to the side, Baddha Konasana kind of movement, is not there yet. So that's one little, I've seen people that do practice with a towel or something in there, but I just think it's not a substitute for working on those areas that are tight. The only other, again, it's kind of a similar thing. I wouldn't use this as a modification because it's not helping you to find that movement, but you can place a strap around the knee, and this is basically going to do exactly the same thing. So you come into the pose with the strap, and then you can kind of pull the strap out to the side, and that creates a little bit more space in the knee joint. Again, I think it just gives you more confidence to say, yes, it's time that I work on that external rotation rather than just do the pose and, prop myself up with these modifications. Okay. So we've talked about the strap, the towel, the blocks. Okay, I think that's everything that I was going to cover. So I might go over and have a look at some questions. I wanted to share with you that you could practice these postures, these techniques every day. Probably going to be too much to ask of most people, but if you did them 3 times a week, they only take 10 minutes, just 10 minutes out of your day, maybe before or after your practice. Or as a midday break when you're working from home all day, you could do these exercises. And because you're strengthening and lengthening, remember, don't forget that key takeaway, they're much more efficient than just passive stretches. I think you'll find that it benefits you much more than just doing passive stretching. Okay, let's have a look at some questions, you guys. So if you have any and you haven't shared them now, then go ahead. Great. Should we stretch the other leg like in pigeon? Okay, so the version of pigeon that I was showing you was targeting the outside of the front hip. If you want to add in the stretch on the back hip, go ahead. I just find if I put this back hip down, I'm not so, okay, yeah, I'm getting a good stretch. So yeah, if you wanted to stretch the back hip as well, you could. I'm just really targeting the outside of this hip. So I'm just sending all my energy, all my focus into strengthening and lengthening these muscles in the front hip. But if you want to do the double whammy, then that's even more efficient. So you stretch the front of the back leg as well. The best breathing practice, you're holding your breath, Becky, yeah, that's a good question. So when you're doing the 5-second holds, you want to try and be breathing as smoothly, calmly as possible. It's hard because you're contracting and the tendency is to just hold the breath and squeeze. But the more you can relax the breath, the more effective the exercises will be as well. So I think I'd tend to use Ujjayi breathing just because it lengthens the breath and it's also a helpful focal point. So I would use Ujjayi breathing, but I think it's probably just because I'm an Ashtanga yogi and that's my tendency. So for the pigeon pose, for example, I would exhale down, hold for 5 and just breathe three times. If you wanted to, you could count in breaths. And then I would exhale, push and lift. Nice and slowly. Okay, so I might inhale down, hold for 5, and then exhale, push back up. That would be my breathing pattern. It's a really good question. And do try to keep the breath going when you're doing every contraction. A soft or hard foam roller. Mine is hard. It's quite a nasty one. You can see that it's got these horrible nodules on the side, and I try and avoid them, and I stick to this smoother bit. A soft one is fine. You'll probably find that you increase your tolerance to the strength of the foam roller over time, so you might want to graduate up to something harder. My lacrosse ball is really heavy, really hard, but I worked up to this over time. I started with something much softer, like a tennis ball kind of one, and then I started to become really tolerant. I didn't feel much from it anymore, so I've moved on to the harder stuff. But yeah, it's optional. Just move up as you become more used to the exercises. I'm not able to close the right knee whilst I'm able to get left into half lotus. Okay, so in lotus pose, the traditional way to do it is to do the right side first, and it's to do with the shape inside the abdominals of where the different organs are. So we're obviously not symmetrical internally. We have different organs on different sides of the body, and so it's supposed to be the right side first and then the left, and then when you go into certain poses, you actually press the heels into different parts of the abdominal area, and that stimulates different effects for different purposes. That's obviously once the heels are really, really high and you're in a very tight lotus pose. So it should be right side first, then left. But if I understand your question correctly, you can get the first leg in, but then you can't close this shin. So I would practice doing that. So get into your right side of the lotus and then practice bringing the foot up. If you notice what I do, I'm leaning back to begin with, and then as I bring my heel in, I lean forward so that I can close the joint. So you could try that and see if that helps for you to get closed. If you mean the next bit where you take the foot out to the side, it is hard to keep this joint closed when you're coming into the next side. Keep working on those exercises. That's what I would advise, and it will become easier and easier because this side will also open up. As this side opens up more, even though you can get the right side in, the more you open it up, the more free this leg will be to come into the second side. So don't think that just because this side is in, that your work is done. Keep working on those poses on both sides, and that will help coming in on the left side of the lotus as well. Thank you, Sabine. Thank you very much, everyone. Great. If that's all your questions, then we can finish our workshop here. If you have any further questions, then please just email me, leave a comment. If you enjoyed the workshop, will you do me a favor and give the video a like, and then that will help other people to see the workshop on my channel as well. And again, donations are welcome but not necessary. PayPal link is below if you feel inclined to donate. So thank you, everyone. Work hard on your exercises, and I can't wait to see your lotus poses blooming. Have a great day.